Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Scoop World Order. Hope you guys had a great weekend. We're going to dive into this week as we're getting near spring ball, about a month away. Spring practice, it's been backed up. It'd be about 3 weeks out, but they're going to back it up to after spring break, which is fine. We're going to go through the coaching staff tonight, some of the promotions, grade the promotions. Obviously, a very an interesting topic because obviously it's going to depend on what they do in season, but just our initial thoughts on that. And we're going to do a little bit of an in-depth evaluation of some of the NFL draft prospects Ohio State is sending to the NFL Combine this week. It's out in Indianapolis. I participated in it. I'm not sure how many of the Ohio State guys are going to be doing at the Combine. I think a lot of these guys are going to wait till Pro Day to run, but it'll be very interesting to see who does what and who interviews. It's always a very buzzworthy event. So we're going to talk about all that and take your questions as well. Again, if you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe. Also click that little alert bell. Again, I appreciate all you guys for all that you guys do. Thank you guys again for making this the #1 Ohio State show by far. Each and every night we try to bring you the heat, even in the off season, even when it's cold out, but we try to bring you guys some great football intel that we have that we're procuring for you on a daily basis. So yeah, we just appreciate you guys being on here every night. Again, if you guys enjoy our content, please give us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. You're gonna do something huge for us. Give us a follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and every other podcasting format. It's completely free. A super easy way to help us out and help patronize the show, help us grow, and help us keep being the #1 Ohio State show of all time. So with that being said, going to bring in my boy Nevadabuck. I gotta get rid of that scene. I apologize. Nevada, how's your day been today?
Today's been a great day, and uh, uh, and this was a great weekend despite Ohio State falling at UCLA today in basketball. It was a great weekend, and excited about the Buckeyes. I can't wait for the 2025 season. I got to tell you, I'm geeking already for football, even though it's only been a few weeks since 2024 officially ended. I'm officially in 2025 prep mode, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Well, I mean, in your head, outside of Julian Sayin, who obviously is going to be the #1 headline, really the quarterback derby, but we assume it'll be Julian Sayin as our starting quarterback this year. What is the biggest question mark going into the 2025 season? Because there's massive changes on both sides of the ball. Obviously, a huge shift of the roster with as many people have moved on, graduated, declared early. What is your second biggest question mark after the quarterback position?
I mean, I'm going to go to a non-position, but I'm going to say the coordinators. I'm going to say Brian Hartline as a first-time play caller. What in the heck is that going to look like? Um, and Matt Patricia, coming from the pros to a college squad. How similar is the OSU defense going to look to last year and the years gone by? What type of little tricks is he going to bring, from his years of experience with Bill Belichick? So to me, Julian, we're going to say is story #1 for sure, but just the whole coordinator thing is going to be amazing to watch because, I mean, I can't remember. Can you ever remember Ohio State having a coordinator that had never coordinated before as the coordinator, like Brian Hartline? I mean, this is kind of rare air, right? Like I don't think I've ever seen this before.
I don't think it's ever happened before at Ohio State. I mean, it's you got to do something significant like Brian has done with recruiting and developing the wide receiver room. And again, we talked at length where if you go out and get a new offensive coordinator, you're probably going to lose Brian. Because Brian wants, again, I talked to Brian a couple of years ago. We were at town hall, and I said, "Look, you got to call plays, dude. Like, you can't just be a position coach." And he was like, "Well, that's Ryan's deal." I was like, "Well, dude, if you ever want to be a head coach, you got to actually be good at something other than recruiting wide receivers. So, I mean, you got to learn how to be a play caller." And all these guys that are big time dudes like Lincoln Riley and Sean McVay and Ryan Day, they all call their own plays, and they're the biggest and the baddest, and they're basically indispensable. So he's going to learn how to do that. Now, it's not ideal to do it at Ohio State for the first time because, as we know, our fans will eat their own. And I fully expect our fan base to turn on Brian Hartline and hate him just because we've hated every offensive coordinator since the beginning of time, including Chip Kelly, who everybody in the world wanted fired and executed after the Michigan game. So it's just something that's going to happen. It's a whole different ball of wax when you go from being a receivers coach that, again, he did it. He's done an incredible job recruiting, developing, all that jazz. It's all great. But now the offense has your name on it. You're not just an ancillary coach who, if the plays are bad, or if execution isn't great, or the offense stinks, when you're the receivers coach, you can kind of float and skate on it. When you're the coordinator, you are in the crosshairs of everybody. And again, most of you guys know who've listened to our show, I just laugh because it's the most predictable thing in the world. People will hate Brian Hartline and they'll hate Matt Patricia this year. At some point, we'll have a game that's a stinker where we don't do very good, where, we turn the ball over. We've got a young new quarterback. We don't have a guy with 50 starts like Will Howard did. So there's going to be times where it's not going to look too hot. And all of a sudden, there's going to be no patience with Brian. And with Brian, obviously, he's done a tremendous job with what he's done. But it's hard calling plays. I mean, Chip Kelly is, I think, the greatest offensive mind maybe ever, or he's in the top 5 to me, and people can laugh at me. But like I said, our offense was incredible under Chip. And I'm hoping that, and I know that Brian, when you're angling to be an offensive coordinator and eventually a head coach, why would you not learn from one of the greatest offensive play callers ever? A guy that, totally rethought offense and everything that he did. And he's been an NFL head coach, and he's been a great asset and a great ally. I just don't know why you wouldn't soak it in. And I'm sure Brian did. Again, he sat in that staff room for a year straight with Chip. And I'm sure Chip's the kind of guy that likes to teach and likes his projects. Again, look at Ryan Day. Like, the reason Ryan Day is where he is, and obviously this is not taking anything away from Ryan because he's worked very hard to do what he did. Chip Kelly went to war and went to bat for Ryan Day with Urban Meyer. When Ryan Day was out of a job, when he got fired at the 49ers, Chip Kelly showed up in the Woody Hayes with Ryan. Ryan interviewed for the OC, and Urban Meyer hired Ryan Day to be the offensive coordinator, a guy that none of us had ever heard of. So, I mean, we're like, what's a Ryan Day? Who's a Ryan Day? And it turns out Chip was right, and Ryan's turned into a fantastic coordinator and a fantastic head coach, and he's won a national title. So that's kind of the path that Brian has to go on. Now, does it worry me a little bit that Brian hasn't called plays? Yeah, because you better get off Instagram, get off Twitter, and get off every social media, because they're going to be coming for you when we have that bad game, man. So, but I'm excited for him. Again, he's not scared and he's tough. You can't be sensitive when you coach at Ohio State. That's the one thing that we've learned. When they wanted to fire Jim Knowles and they wanted to fire Ryan Day and they want to fire Justin Fry, and Justin Fry is making $1 million a year to coach in the NFL now. It kind of says it all, not to mention Will Howard and Trey Henderson and everybody else. So it's going to be very interesting. And Matt Patricia will get the same teeth just because our defense is going to be much less experienced, much less talented, but still one of the top 5 most talented defenses in the country. Just nowhere near where they were last year. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with that. What are your thoughts on that, Nevada? And let's start grading some of these moves and hires. And we'll start with promoting Brian Hartline to offensive coordinator.
Well, the move of Hartline to coordinator, it's I have to grade it on a curve because, in the context of what the situation was this: if you do not promote Brian Hartline to coordinator, you lose Brian Hartline, and people have to understand that is there is an absolute connection. I mean, he was not going to stay here if he was passed over one more time. He's not the kid anymore. What's Brian, 38, 39 years old or something like that? He's not a little baby anymore. There are head coaches in the NFL younger than him, and he's got to start his coordinating journey. So for Brian, and if you lose Brian Hartline, then in the era of instantaneous free agency and NIL, do you lose Carnell Tate? Do you lose J.J. Smith? Do you lose Brandon Ennis? Do you lose Chris Henry. I mean, you just go right down the list, and you certainly are in risk and danger on every single one of those players. So, in the context of that and what it means to Ohio State, I think that's an A. I think it's an A higher, just because I disagree with you slightly. I think that Brian he'll have more rope with he will be hated by as soon as we don't get a first down, the calls will start coming that he's inexperienced. But um, I he'll obviously have more political capital with the fan base because I mean his recruiting. I don't think we have to be fair, and his recruiting has been superhuman, like otherworldly good. It's not just like he's not like just a good recruiter or a really good recruiter or staying in the tradition of great recruiters. I mean, he has taken it to a completely different level, and if you look at the success of Ohio State and you had to boil it down to to one position, if you had to pick one position group, you might go to wide receiver because when you get the elite wide receivers, then you get the quarterbacks, and when you get the quarterbacks, you get the other skill players, and it kind of builds off each other. So, he's been integral to our success. Um, Now, I give the higher an A. Now, how do I think he's going to do? Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I know that Ryan thinks a lot of him. I know Chip Kelly thinks a lot of him. I know Urban Meyer thinks a lot of him. But I just think coaching or calling plays is hard. And if it wasn't, everybody would do it. Everybody would do it capably and well. I think more the chances are greater than not that he's certainly not gonna be good the first year doing it, and if he is, then he's truly exceptional, and then he truly is in that rare air of guys that can just come right off the bench, step in, recruit at an incredible level, and call plays with equal aplomb. I I'm cautiously optimistic about how he'll do. I think it's great that he has the training wheels of a Ryan Day to kind of help him when he falls, which he inevitably will. But I'll give the higher an A, and I'll give how well he'll do. I'll give an incomplete because I just don't know right now.
Yeah, I mean, you have to give it an A because if it's promote him or lose him, then I mean, obviously, you have to attach JJ to it. You have to attach Chris Henry. You have to attach. I mean, that receiver room would very much be at risk. And plus, this is the hire that will galvanize that room. This is the hire that will Brandon Ennis and those guys that are going to want to go to war and make sure that their guy Hart is successful. So I think that from a political move, it makes sense. Now, it's not Ed Warner, but like that was also, in 14 when Tom Herman took off for Houston, the political move to Urban was to promote Ed. Now, where Brian Hartline and Ed Warner are similar. Now, again, different personalities, way different recruiters, way different younger versus older, whatever, is that I don't love the fact that Brian Hartline is still the receivers coach and the offensive coordinator. I don't love that. It reminds me of Ed being the O-line coach and offensive coordinator because I think that they're just tough jobs, because again, wide receivers, we always have three on the field. I'd say we have three on the field probably 70% of the time. A couple of times we might have two. Very rarely do we have one if we're down in goal line, whatever, short yardage. And sometimes we'll have 4 or 5 if we're really going to spread them out. But it's a lot of guys to coach, and it's a very technical position, and it's a position where you got to kind of watch the whole field. I know that he's got Devin Jordan. I know that I don't know if he's got a GA or an intern. I don't know if we have any GAs anymore. Now we have infinite coaches. I don't know if GAs even need to exist anymore. But with that being said, there's a reason why a lot of these guys that are offensive coordinators end up coaching the quarterbacks. So Chip Kelly, quarterbacks coach, Ryan Day, quarterbacks coach, Tom Herman, quarterbacks coach, Jim Trussell, who didn't call the plays, Jim Bowman called the plays, but Truss was kind of the quarterbacks coach. So there's a pattern here where, you got to be really in tune with what your quarterback likes, how he thinks, what he does. And when you're in there for 1,000 hours during the off season, in season, every drill, 7-on-7, team drills, everything. You're always with the quarterback because again, the quarterback's the most important player on the entire field, always. So, do I like that Brian is not going to be around the quarterback and Billy Fessler is? I don't like that. Now, again, can it work? Sure. Is there a reason why there aren't a lot of offensive coordinators in the country in college or in the NFL that are also wide receiver coaches? Yeah. And again, please in the chat, show me the guys that are wide receiver coaches and offensive coordinators. Because I can't think of one. And again, I'm not saying that it can't work, but it's a lot to coach. Like there's some positions, running backs super easy to coach, tight ends super easy to coach. Um, if you put a gun to my head, and I know that this will sound absolutely ridiculous, and I'll get flamed for it, but like I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world to flip Keenan Bailey and have him coach the receivers and have Hart coach the tight ends, because I think Brian needs to be involved with the running game, and tight ends is very simple to coach, just like Kevin Wilson did it. Now, does Brian still need to be really deep in with that receiver room? Of course, because those guys all come to play for Brian, but the problem is like when you do a lot of running drills, like inside run and stuff that Brian needs to be a part of. And inside run is a drill where it's basically like the front seven. So usually in the old days, it'd be four defensive linemen, three linebackers, maybe a safety, versus the offensive front, which is the O line, tight ends. We used to have a fullback, we're not fullback anymore, obviously. And you just run basic running plays, real physical drill. But the receivers are down at the other end of the field with the DBs running routes against each other. So Brian, when he should be down watching, the O line and the running game, he'd be down at the other end of the field. So I don't know if that's going to be a hindrance, but it's going to be something to watch because, like I said, I think receivers is a really difficult position to coach because you got 3-4 guys on the field every play. And I'm not saying you can't do it, but there's a reason why most offensive staffs are structured to have the offensive coordinator with the quarterback or with the tight ends. Like again, I think those are both great. If you said, Kirk, you're the athletic director, my offensive coordinator is always going to be with the quarterback. Period. Point blank. I think I've seen it work with Tom Herman, seen it work with Ryan, I've seen it work with Chip Kelly. I just think it's too important. Like you got to be on. You and your quarterback have to see everything through the same eyes. Because when you're calling a play, you want to have that deep conversation with your quarterback about this is what he likes, this is what he doesn't like. And when you're down the hallway at the receivers room, then you don't get to have that conversation each and every day. So that's my opinion. But yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see how much Ryan Helms, because again, and obviously Billy Fessler is a phenom and they love him. But it's going to be interesting to see how all of this works out. And again, like Tyler Bowen, who's our new offensive line coach, he'll be our next stop on the grading train. He was the offensive coordinator at Virginia Tech. He coached the quarterbacks and he played offensive line, and he's a big fat offensive lineman. And but he, again, when he's calling the plays, man, he's sitting in that quarterback room. Now, does he know how to coach quarterbacks? I don't know. Probably not. He never played it, and he coached tight ends and O line his whole career leading up to that. But when he became the offensive coordinator, he became the quarterbacks coach. Which, again, if I was a coordinator, I'd be the quarterbacks coach. I'm not fooling with anything else because you got to be on the same wavelength as him. Nevada, Tyler Bowen is a guy, interesting hire from Virginia Tech. Really fortified him with Charlie Dickey from Oklahoma State, Marcus Johnson from Purdue, who I had a little birdie tell me that Marcus Johnson is a fantastic person and a fantastic coach. And he's coached like I was joking on our shows, like those guys have better resumes than Tyler Bowen does. I mean, Marcus Johnson coached at Mississippi State, played in the league. Charlie Dickey's been coaching for like 37 years is at Oklahoma State with Jeff Gundy. They've both put a lot of NFL guys into the league. But what are your thoughts on you could almost do Tyler Bowen and then maybe if you want to do the whole conglomerate of the three from a grade perspective?
I'll give that an A minus. I'll give it an A minus just because I think Tyler Bowen doesn't exactly fit the profile of what I'm used to from an offensive line coach, but I do think the addition of the extra guys, certainly come well credentialed, and any one of them really could have made a case for being an offensive line coach. But I think it really speaks to the new way of evaluating staffs now. It's no longer just looking at the 10 countable coaches or 11 or whatever we're going to get to, on that. It's looking at who do they have as the support people, whether you want to call them analysts or whatever name you want to attach to the guys that are helping out in terms of doing it. And you and I have joked about this, but I really believe it's going to become a thing where, much like when you're a parent, you're evaluating colleges and you're looking at the number of teachers per student ratio. I think they're going to be looking at the number of coaches per player ratio. And, you're almost getting to the point where every player could have his own coach, and I know that sounds crazy, but if you start counting the number of guys, it's not far away from that. I mean, it's not like crazy train. I mean, we got to have 30, 35 guys on staff and 100 players. So it's like 3-1 or something like that. But you're getting a lot of individual attention. Now you can coach on the field. There's all sorts of instruction can be done by guys that, again, that all used to be verboten. So, the thing's changing. But I think the offensive line brain trust that we have right now gets an A- from me, and just because I do think we'll be, I do like that we have somebody with recruiting chops. I know you're old now. You're the old head. You used to be the young whippersnapper. Now you're the old man yelling at clouds out there, where you're like, I don't like those whippersnapper offensive line coaches that play Nintendo and play Call of Duty and talk to the kids on Instagram. But I like it. I like the fact that he believes he can recruit at a high level. He's demonstrated he can recruit at a high level. Now let's see if he can do it at Ohio State. So at least I'm willing to give him a chance from that standpoint. I also like the fact that he does have an appreciation for the total offense, having been a person that's actually called plays. And I want to go back to one of your earlier points, which I think is really kind of an underrated one that hasn't really gotten a lot of run, has been the whole Brian Hartline wide receiver coach thing. Because when it was announced that Brian was doing this, I just assumed that they were hiring. So has that been announced? Have they said Brian is the wide receiver coach? Nobody's been able to tell me that directly, and we still have a spot open there, right? I mean, am I missing a guy?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, well, no, well, we promoted Billy Fessler, so he took Chip Kelly's spot. So, but it really doesn't matter as well. I mean, because we lost Chip and Justin Fry. We promoted Billy Fessler, who took Chip's spot, and Brian's the OC now. So,
yeah. I figured there would be a Devin Jordan, or there would be somebody that would come in and there'd be somebody with a little bit more experience that would come in and give Brian assistance on the wide receivers. And I'm sure that's probably something that's still in the cards, but I just haven't seen that hire made, because I'm just not sure. Is there another offensive coordinator in football that coaches wide receivers too, that you can think
I,
of? I mean,
the,
you've got the
I
encyclopedic knowledge of all coaches.
like I said, I don't think so. Like I said, I could be dead wrong, but like that's a play caller. No, I mean, and again, please in the chat prove me wrong. Like that, there's someone that coaches receivers, because in the NFL, I've never heard of someone being a wide receivers coach and being, because you're not around the running game, and again, that's like when when there have been offensive coordinators that were offensive line coaches. Again, I love the offensive line. I coached the offensive line, and if I would have stayed in football, I'd have been an offensive line coach. Like I love studying the offensive line, but it's really hard to be an offensive line coach who's great and also be a play caller, because again, there's just too many instances during a practice. The practice is 2 to 2.5 hours long, where you're not with the receivers and the quarterbacks. So like when 7-on-7 happens during practice, which is obviously, it's the receivers versus the skeleton of the defense minus the defensive line. That's the linebackers, the nickel, the safeties, the corners versus our throwing game with our running backs and our receivers. Like the offensive and defensive lines are down on the other end of the field doing one-on-one pass rush or walking through blitz pickups or doing something. Excuse me. So like that was my big concern with Ed Warner, is like, I'm like, dude, like no matter how talented you are, you can't, if you don't see what went wrong in 7-on-7, and then all of a sudden you go to team period and you got to go call the plays, like you have no idea what went good. or what went bad or what the quarterback likes. Or like I said, when Ed was really successful at Kansas, again, give Ed his due, because I know a lot of people hate Ed, but like when he was good at Kansas in '07, they were number 2 in the country, and I was praying to God that we'd play him in the national title game instead of LSU, but of course we got LSU. He was a quarterbacks coach and the offensive coordinator, so he was right with his little quarterback the whole time. And he again, I think that's it's just so critical that you're really tight with your quarterback. And again, that's something that worries me with Brian. And like, you know, I know that they made Billy Fessler the quarterbacks coach, but like Billy's not calling the plays. Like I don't know the last time. Well, I do know the last time it was when Ed was a play caller, and when Jim Bowman was the play caller, where there wasn't like a play caller who wasn't in the room with the quarterbacks. Because even when Corey Dennis was our quarterbacks coach, like Ryan Day was in that room every day, so he knew C.J. Stroud like the back of his hand, and Ryan was still calling the play. So the play caller has been locked in with the quarterbacks for a long time because Ryan knows that that's the best way to do it. So again, I don't know what the structure is going to be. I know what I would do. I'd just make Brian the quarterbacks coach, and have Ryan Day sit in there and teach them and whatever, and make someone else the receivers coach. Make Devin Jordan and Billy Fessler, Keenan Bailey sort it around. And I think that would because I think Brian eventually has to become a quarterbacks coach if he's going to be a big time coordinator and turn into a head coach. So, but again, this is going to be something that'll be interesting to see how it goes in spring ball, because you have to, he's got a lot to manage, man. I'm telling you, when you got to coach the receivers and be an OC, he might be the only guy in the country that does that. So, but again, it'll be, it's never been easier to do it though, because you've got unlimited coaches. So you can hire Devin Jordan and interns and QCs, because there's no more, you only have 10 countable coaches. Now you can have 3 wide receiver coaches, 3 offensive line coaches, 2 tight end coaches. So the manpower is ferocious if you've got the money for it now. So, but yeah, I'd give Tyler Bowen, I'm sure I'll end up giving him, with the trio, I'll give it an A- for sure. Excuse me. I think that Marcus Johnson is really intriguing. Charlie Dickey. I mean, those guys, they're old crusty guy. I mean, Charlie Dickey, especially an old crusty guy. Marcus Johnson's not that old and crusty. He's mid-40s, but they've been around the block, and they've had to recruit the Big 12 and the SEC. So I love that. Because I know that they've had to get in fist fights, and Marcus Johnson recruited some really good players, some top 10 draft picks in the NFL draft. So again, I really like those hires. I think that a benefit to having 3 offensive line coaches is that you have basically triple the manpower for recruiting. You can assign prospects maybe by regions, because if you look at where these guys have coached, I think that it's really strategic. I think it's really smart. Marcus Johnson, I believe he played at Ole Miss. He played for the Vikings, but they coached at Mississippi State. So he's got, a lot of Southern ties, obviously recruiting Mississippi, which is a place where we've basically never gotten anyone from. So that'd be a great place to start getting some big talented linemen from. And Charlie Dickey's been at Oklahoma State, so he's surely been working Texas heavily. And then you look at Tyler Bowen. He's been mostly Northeast oriented, Penn State, Virginia Tech, that type of deal. So between the 3 of them, they kind of each have this like little eclectic part of their recruiting where they had to really go hammer to find their kids. Because if you're Oklahoma State, you're probably getting a humongous chunk of your kids from Oklahoma and Texas. Like that's pretty much where you're going to be getting your kids from. You might go to California for a little bit, but you're mining the crap out of Texas. If you're Ole Miss, man, you're not leaving that Mississippi, Louisiana, Atlanta, Texas area. Again, really fertile grounds. And then obviously with the Washington, DC area that Tyler Bowen's familiar with, like I think that you've got nice coverage across the country. And you also have, there's something to be said, and this is really smart by Ryan Day, about having guys with the credentials of these 3 calling you, that is much higher than a regular graduate assistant. Now, when I was a J, and I'm not saying I was some be all end all or whatever, But I had played in the NFL and I was a first team All American, and I'd done a lot of really cool stuff that kids could relate to, and they're like, "Oh, I want to do all that stuff." So great. But a lot of graduate assistants have never done any of that. A lot of them are guys that were student coaches and they get promoted. So, when you're, excuse me, a graduate assistant that maybe doesn't have that kind of credential, I think sometimes it's tough to get a kid to be interested in talking to you, and again, I love talking to kids. I was the first guy on Facebook and Twitter in the what he is. It was hilarious because like when I first figured out about Facebook and stuff in 2011, I was sitting in the staff room and I said, we're not allowed to send text messages, but you're allowed to send these guys messages on Facebook, and it's infinite. And so I started like looking up SEC offensive line coaches. They all had Facebook profiles. Our guys didn't. None of our coaches did. I mean, you could imagine our old staff, bunch of old guys. None of them had Facebook profiles back then. And I was like, guys, we need to do this. I was like, we need to like start hitting these guys up on Facebook because it's unlimited. Like there was this really stupid rule that because the NCAA is like, they're a very dumb organization. There was a rule where you were allowed to send a message, a Facebook message or Twitter DM, but you could not text. So there was a huge like discrepancy. And everyone, like today you look at that, it's like the dumbest thing ever because you're like, well, what's the difference? Well, there was a difference in the NCAA because the NCAA is stupid. So now it's unlimited, whatever, except during dead periods. So, but yeah, I like the coverage. I like the age of the line coaches. Like I said, I want my line coach to be old and crusty and an O line guy, and I think that Charlie Dickey's that, and Marcus Johnson's that, and they've coached at big time places, big time venues, and I'm just excited to see what they do with this line because this line's going to need a lot of coaching. They're young and they're going to have to lean on these guys and really develop, especially the two tackles. Nevada, any thoughts of that, or we will move on to our DC?
Yeah, no, just I mean, it's funny because we were looking at the offensive line, the middle of the year, or the beginning of the year last year, and you've got Josh and Donnie and Seth and Tegra and Josh, and you're like, wow, man, we're gonna lose 4 starters and not have anybody back on the line, and all of a sudden you end up with 4 guys on the interior playing those 3 interior positions that have all started and played significant minutes against big time opponents against the big game. So the silver lining to the injury bug was that we built some incredible depth on the offensive line coming back. So these guys do have raw material to work with, and I'm just that will never not be amazing to me that we got to lineman number 9, and that those 4 guys they go to that rotating guard thing, which I just did not see how in the world that was possibly going to work, and it and it worked marvelously, and they all thrived from it, and just did their thing. So yeah, no, I think they're going to have their work cut out for them, but they do have some raw material to work with. They've got the interior core of a national championship team to work with. So that's certainly going to give them a leg up. Now on the defensive side, you want to go to Matt Patricia first?
Well, I mean, do you just want to? We could do Billy Fessler, or we could just give him an incomplete because we don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, they like him a lot.
They
I mean,
love him. Yeah.
they love him. I mean, they really love. I don't know him enough or have enough native experience with him to give a grade on Billy Fessler. But what I can tell you is Ohio State is all in on this guy. They really, really like him. And if you look at the context clues for the people that he's been hired by and the people that he's worked with the Chip Kellys, with the Joe Moritz. I mean, guys that I really have a lot of respect for from an offensive side. He certainly has the pedigree of a guy that would be great. And when I talk to people at Ohio State, they tell me he's the next great one. So of all the young guys on the staff, I mean, more so than Brian Hartline, more so Billy Fessler's the one they're talking about. So yeah, I guess we have to give it an incomplete because I just don't have enough experience with him to make it. But I can tell you, they think it's an A+ hire, and they're really excited about having him as the quarterback coach. And Will Howard loved him. Now, Will Howard loves everybody. He's kind of a I love everybody and stuff. But if you look at the improvement of Will Howard from his days at Kansas State, where he was a really good college quarterback, where he came to Ohio State and became superhuman. I mean, somebody deserves credit for that. And obviously Ryan Day is a big part of that. Chip Kelly's a big part of that. But Billy Fessler did work as well. So I think we if they do bad, we blame them. So when they do well, we have to give them credit. And Billy did a really nice job with Will, and we all saw that on the field.
Yeah, I think that the context clues obviously with him getting hired at Akron. I mean, he's young too, 24. I mean, he's maybe 26 now, 27. But I mean, he's like 25. He was going to be the OC at Akron, and then he gets hired by Chip to go to UCLA, and Chip's there for about 2 weeks and then leaves. I mean, he left him in a little bit of a lurch when Deshaun Foster got promoted, and I don't think he's going to keep him. So, at the end of the day, this is a lot like with Will Howard. I trust Ryan Day implicitly when it's anything that has to do with quarterbacks. I trust Ryan Day. So if Ryan Day is going to hire this guy to coach his quarterbacks, I trust him. And this isn't because like with Corey Dennis, and I love Corey Dennis, but obviously him being Urban's son-in-law, like Ryan gets the gig, promotes Corey. Obviously it doesn't work out. And again, I love Corey to death. I hope he does great at UNLV. But Billy is a guy that Ryan could have hired anybody for this job. I mean, I couldn't imagine like when Chip left, the calls and the resumes and the text messages, and I mean every quarterback coach in the universe wants to come here. Why wouldn't you? So I mean to pick Billy Fessler, like it doesn't feel like a internal, like I've got a whatever type promotion. So yeah, I'll say incomplete. But he's gonna have his hands full. I mean, he doesn't have, again, like with Chip last year, and I love Chip Kelly, but he had a quarterback that had 50 starts or 45 starts, whatever Will Howard had. It was a lot. Where Billy's guy's got 0. So and Lincoln's got 1. So it's gonna be that's a different ball of wax completely. And again, I'm not convinced that they're not gonna go after somebody in the second portal. So that'll be interesting to see. Defensively, Nevada, Matt Patricia is our new defensive coordinator. I think he's fantastic. I'm very excited to see what he does and how he pushes the entire coaching staff. But what are your thoughts on Matt Patricia?
Well, again, much like we talked about the Heartline hire, and we talked about kind of the implications of not hiring him, I think the context of the Patricia hire is who could you have hired that could have commanded the respect of all the other people in that room and kept that room together. The Larry Johnsons and the OG Walt and the Matt Guerrieri and who was that going to be? Because you needed to bring somebody in. It probably couldn't be from college, because who did a better job in college than Ohio State? And the answer was nobody. So now it's like, okay, you had to go to the pros. And so you probably don't want just a pro guy who's just been like a position coach. You want somebody who's actually been a coordinator. So now we're looking to ex-pro coordinators that have been successful. So it's a short list. I mean, it's not a lot of guys. It's not a lot of guys that are out there that are available that would do it. So in that perspective, to me, it's an A hire. It's an A hire because to get a guy that's a multiple Super Bowl winner who was able to come in and keep keep the gang together and keep the party kind of going on the Ohio State defense. Obviously we'll judge him by his results and how he kind of melds himself in there, how he kind of integrates. But just in terms of being able to just to be able to have the stature to be able to come and do the job, I'm not sure you could have come up with 5 other names of people, of anybody, living people that are under the age of 80 and still in control of their sensibilities, that have had successful stints as defensive coordinators in the NFL, let alone the fact that he's also been an offensive coordinator, that he's also been an NFL head coach. And I've said this many times, I don't believe there's another person in the world ever that's been all 3 of those jobs. I don't think anybody's ever done that. So Patricia is certainly an accomplished guy, certainly an experienced guy, certainly a successful guy. So in that spirit, to me, it's an A hire.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's going to be. I've said it many times. He's the best thing that'll happen to Brian Hartline, just because there's a lot of periods in practice. Most of it's scripted, where it's you kind of work together. Hey, we need to see some of these blitzes. We need to see some of this coverage. What do you guys need to see? We need to see some tight zone. We need to see some RPO stuff. So there's always some kind of across the staff room hallway collaboration that goes on, where you can walk down and kind of script stuff together. But then there's also some periods where it's just call it, where it's literally right off the cuff, move the field. It's realistic. So if you get a first down, you keep going. If not, like a scrimmage. And I think that'll be fascinating to see Brian go against Matt Patricia. So again, Matt's was coaching in Super Bowls when Brian was still playing in the league. And so, he's not any stranger to pressure. And I think that, his thoroughness, I think, will be it'll be interesting. I mean, because again, when you come from that New England culture, man, I mean, those guys, there's work, and then there's like work. And Nick Saban, I've read every piece of literature that he's ever written. I've watched every documentary about him. He always talks about the hardest I ever worked was when I worked for Bill Belichick in Cleveland, by far. So Matt Patricia did that for like 20 years, minus the 3 years in Detroit. So, those staff meetings are gonna be long now. I mean, you're that D staff, and they're gonna work hard, and that's good. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But the thoroughness is going to be something that I think will be good for Ryan. Again, Ryan's already at the top of his game, but the hardest part for Ryan is like, how can you get even sharper in the coaching profession? What can you get exposed to that you haven't been exposed to? So when you get a guy that's been a 20-year New England Patriot, and not just a Patriot, but like the play caller on the defense, offensive coordinator, I mean, a literal, maybe, I don't want to be stupid, but I mean, he might be the smartest football mind there is right now. Because I can't think of a guy who's been an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator in the National Football League. Like in this century. I'm not talking about like the 1940s when they had one coach. I'm talking about in the era of like 30-man coaching staffs. He's been a defensive coordinator and an offensive coordinator. And Bill Belichick hired him to be an offensive coordinator and an offensive line coach. So I mean, that's insane. So I think that level of football acumen will be something that the whole staff will develop and learn from. I think it's gonna be really good. Like I said, I'm excited to see what he does. How much of Jim Knowles' like 3 high safety stuff stays. Who knows? Because I think that there will be pushback, but I'm sure that there will be some, Matt Patricia going to OG Walt and some of these guys, and hey, what do you explain to me why this defense, why you guys did it like this? Because there's a lot of good stuff to it. Like Caleb Downs in the middle of the field, I thought was really good last year when they did that. But do we have the safeties to play that defense? Because replacing Jordan Hancock and Lathan Ransom is not a walk in the park, guys. And I know Malik Hartford and all these other guys are good, but they're not those two. So it'll be interesting to see what the personnel looks like. A new steps up there. So any thoughts, Nevada? We could dig into some super chats. Actually, I want to go through this mock draft, but any thoughts, Nevada?
No, I think the Patricia thing is going to be really interesting. But he's a brilliant guy. He's a brilliant guy, and he understands there's some cultural pushback and some things that he's got to work through. But nothing he hasn't dealt with before. And I think if I know people that are close to him and they're talking about how excited he is about this challenge, and that kind of energizes me, because I know he's excited to be here, and that's pretty great.
Well, yeah, because again, this is the spot where these guys can jump off and get their next dream job. I'm sure that he'd like another run at being a head coach, and I'm sure that probably starts with being an NFL coordinator again at a high level. And we saw what happened with Chip. I mean, Chip was, I don't say he's on the scrap heap, but a year ago at this time, if we hadn't just hired Chip Kelly, it was close. And there were a lot of people that weren't excited, or they thought it was a bad hire, or they thought he didn't know what he was doing. And I'm like, I don't know what you guys. I don't know what film you guys watched. I know the answer is none, but I was like over the moon when we got Chip Kelly. I was like, oh my God. I was like, have you ever seen his defense or his offenses before? Obviously not. Number 2 in the nation, rushing at UCLA with a bunch of 2-star offensive linemen. And they had a really good running back in Charbonnet. He's really good with the Seahawks and DTR, but he didn't have maulers up front by any stretch. So it was fun watching his scheme. All right, let's get into the combine, Nevada. We'll be real brief on this, but I want to throw up this NFL.com mock draft real quick. This is real interesting. Obviously, the Browns are at 2 with Cam Ward. 1 is Abdul Carter, who I think is by far the best player in this draft. So hopefully the Titans don't screw it up, but I don't really care if they do. We get Mason Graham at 5, our Michigan Wolverine buddy. Shador going to Vegas. You know, a bunch of stuff that you guys really don't care about. Keep scrolling, keep scrolling. Then we get into the 20s. Colson Loveland, 20 to Denver. You guys like Kirk. I don't care about any of this. Ashton Gianti to the Steelers. Then we get to Nevada's Green Bay Packers, and they take the great Josh Simmons, which I don't think he's going to be there at 23. I think he'll be gone by then. But and then at 24, Travion Henderson to the Vikings. Then at 25, Emeka Egbuka to reunite with CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans. Then you scroll down a little bit further, 28, Donovan Jackson. So, you know, and again, those are all guys that stuck around for their senior years. Obviously, Josh didn't, but Josh, when you're a 4th-year junior, to me, he's the same age as Trey. That's kind of like being a senior. You know, he's not a 3rd-year junior. He's a 4th-year junior. So he's the same age as the other 4 guys that are all 4-year players. But your thoughts, Nevada, on 4 potential Buckeyes going in the first round of the draft, and how exciting is that?
Well, I think it could be 5. I think Will Howard could slip into the first round, and I know that I'm just telling you, he has got the heat. There's always a guy that's got the heat that's flying up the draft boards, and Will Howard is flying up the draft boards right now. It's like everybody's kind of discovered the guy that we've been talking about all year, but they're starting to figure it out. But no, it's exciting. It's so exciting after you win a national championship to see stuff like this happen. You want good things to happen to good people. You want guys that came back for their senior year for one more rodeo to get paid off. You don't want to see them do it and then have miserable senior years and ruin their draft stock, ruin their future, do this because they try to do the right thing by Ohio State. I mean, these guys did good. They did good, and they're now a team that's really written in the history books of Ohio State. They'll never be forgotten. And on top of that, they almost universally to a person severely enhanced their draft stock by coming back for another year, which is another great story for Ohio State, another great selling point for guys to stand around at Ohio State. So yeah, I'm super excited about it, and I'm super excited to collect on our bet of over 13 Buckeyes drafted
Yoder.
for $2,000. Yoder, pay us our money, man. Just pay us now.
Just pay us now, baby. Yeah, I think Tyleek could sneak into the first round. I mean, Tyleek's film is really good. It's like people
so good. He's such a good player.
You get those big guys, man. I mean, they're just so rare to have. But it's going to be an exciting week in the prep for the combine. I don't know if any of our guys are going to test. I mean, the guys I've talked to, you know, they're so far behind from a training perspective and body healing. Like, is it best to go now, or is it better to take another month and just do it at pro day? And some of these guys, I think that a big trend that's going to happen is guys are going to stop running. They're going to do like what Marvin Harrison did, where Marvin didn't run at all. He didn't do anything. 'Cause he didn't need to. You know, he didn't want to risk anything. He didn't do any extra workouts. I've seen there was a cornerback from Wisconsin that got hurt at a private workout. He was a first-round pick, and he was never the same. So, I mean, I think these guys are going to limit their exposure. Like Paris Johnson last year, 2 years ago, he didn't run a 40. He didn't do a bench press. He didn't do anything. Now, granted, Paris is Paris. Dewan worked out. He didn't do anything at pro day, but I think these high-end guys are going to do less and less as the seasons get longer. All right, Nevada, any thoughts? We'll dig into some super chats.
No, I mean, like there's an old adage in sales of like, when you get the sales, stop selling. So for Ohio State guys, you know, like it's kind of like Marvin Harrison. Why run? Why possibly audition anymore. Just go tell them to go watch the tape, and that's for the Ohio State guys, the same way. But this pro day, like I said, it's going to be, we're going to have the two polar opposite pro days. We're going to have the Kirk Barton pro day there with the Pokemon convention and your mom there tossing the ball to you and you running through the cones and your Budweiser Beer Buddies T-shirt and stuff like that. And then you're going to have this one where you're going to have 97 scouts and every great player that's ever been there at Ohio State. So we've got both ends of the spectrum here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's ever been a smaller combine or a pro day than mine. I mean, it was. I mean, we didn't have any talent. I mean, we had Vernon was the top 5-ish, top 6-ish pick, and then we had Larry Grant and me, and we were the only draftable guys. So it was a small crowd, dude, real small. So all right, let's get some super chats going. Daryl Schoenberger, thanks for the 5. Thanks for being an ultra member as well. I appreciate you, my friend. Whatever happened with LaCharles Bentley, Nevada? I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah, no, I think I think LaCharles is going to be working with Ohio State in some capacity to be determined. We've always thought it was going to be some sort of an analyst / consultant / affiliatory type of relationship, not like a permanent coach. But I think that's something that's on the horizon. But yeah, I'm not surprised it hasn't been announced yet because frankly, they just announced the staff. And I think there's a lot of these other kind of ancillary positions that they're going to be filling during the offseason. And I would expect some sort of relationship between LaCharles and Ohio State to be announced in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because he works. He has an NIL deal or some sort of deal with Arizona State where the offensive linemen go train at his facility over there, and he's done that with Oregon. He'll go up there and work their O linemen out. So I would think it would be something like that more so than like at least while his kids are still in high school. I mean, his kids are still in high school, and he's been helping out with St. Ignatius for the last couple of years, coaching his kids. So it's like I can't see him moving back to Cleveland with his kids and sending them to St. Ignatius, and then like having because St. Ignatius is real important to LaTrells. So I can't see him moving them to Columbus and them not being able to attend Ignatius where he went. But he also has he has a sports agency and training facilities, and he works for the NFL. I mean, he's got 7 different things that he does. It feels like so. Do you add full-time football coach on top of it, or do you do kind of the consulting thing that he does? So it always felt like it's going to be like a consulting thing because once you dive into the coaching thing, like it's hard to do all the other things. Like it's hard to have a guy that runs an agency also be working into what he hates. I don't think that's ever happened before, but it could. I mean, like I've seen guys switch careers and whatever, but it seems like it does really well. So I don't know. But I don't think it's dead or anything. But he trains high school kids and he does NIL for high schoolers and whatever. So it's kind of where it is. So Harash Chesame, appreciate you, my dude. Thanks for the deuce. Do you think Jason Moore takes a leap next season? That is a name we're all going to watch because that is a guy that's got a lot of talent and he's had no production since he's been here. But we need him, especially with Hero Kanu taking off. Like he's the guy that you need 3 or 4 guys in that middle of the defense at defensive tackle, and he's easily one of them. So, Nevada, what are your thoughts? Do you think Jason Moore takes a leap next season?
I do. He's actually a name that I've heard a lot about, and a guy that one of the Wisemen's told me a name to watch, and I've got a nugget coming on some of the guys to watch through winter ball, but he'll definitely be part of the nugget because he's starting to get some buzz, and that you and I have been doing this for a long time. You can generally tell when you start hearing those names for multiple people, you're like, okay, this is something I'm going to really start paying attention to. Well, Jason Moore is one of those guys, so definitely a name to pay attention to.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sean, thank you for the 10. Appreciate you, my friend. Curious if people are dismissing Lincoln Keenholz, saying maybe the next Stroud, but Keenholz may be the next Will Howard, a 6'3" uber athletic junior who's square jawed over laid back, smaller California sophomore. Nevada, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, look, I don't think it's crazy. I mean, there's a lot of people that like Lincoln. There's definitely a camp of Lincoln supporters that are outside. So it's not crazy talk. I don't look, I believe that Julian Saint's going to be the guy. I believe that. I've been told that, and I think really smart people close to the program believe that as well. Having said that, sometimes things don't go as planned, and as you know, you famously lived through a quarterback situation where a lot of people, a lot of smart people thought Justin Zwick was going to be the quarterback, should be the quarterback, would be the quarterback. And then that Troy Smith kick returner guy came on, and he turned out to be a passable college quarterback and okay. So, look, you just don't know. They got to go out and do it. So I don't think we know on that yet. Gun to my head, who am I picking, Lincoln or Julian? I'm saying Julian, but hey, stranger things have definitely happened in Ohio State than Lincoln turning out to be a good quarterback and being a good quarterback at Ohio State.
Well, I think that people write off Lincoln because of obviously the Cotton Bowl performance where he wasn't ready to play and the offensive line was, in a bad shape where they played a center that didn't know the calls and they played Lincoln who didn't know the plays and it was a disaster. So I think that's why people are down on him. But I think that the biggest reason I think people are also dismissing Lincoln is because when it came time to put in a quarterback, I mean I believe, and I could be wrong, but after Devin got pulled out of a game, Julian was the next guy in the game, correct? It wasn't Lincoln. So, I mean, Ryan Day, if there's one thing that Ryan Day does not care about, it's feelings. So, I mean, it could have been easy to just go, well, Lincoln's older, so let's put him in for Julian. But he didn't. He put Julian in because he thinks Julian is better. And Julian was, you remember Julian's a 5-star superstar coming out of college and, or excuse me, coming out of high school. And he was Lincoln was kind of part of that merry-go-round where we had um the kid that went Brock Glenn or whatever that went to Florida State, and then we pushed him out and we went with Lincoln. And again, I'm not dismissing Lincoln at all. I mean, Mickey Marotti called him fast twitch Joe Burrow, um, which again, that's about as gaudy could ever be. So I don't know if that's going to materialize. I mean, Joe Burrow is obviously one of the 5 best players in the NFL right now, MVP candidate quarterback. I mean, you can't get as valuable as that, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes in the as you push through the season in the competition because again, like guys need to stay ready. Anything can happen. I mean, we saw Braxton Miller's shoulder fall out of the socket in a preseason practice, and he didn't get hit. I mean, guys can get hurt, and again, in a position battle in football or any sport, the best of it, the best ability is availability. So, if something happens and for some reason a guy can't go and a guy excels, then it is what it is. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. Review Tube, thanks for the deuce. Appreciate you, my friend. Are we concerned about Julian Sands' height? I don't know. I mean, the mock draft I just put up has Cam Ward at the second pick in the draft, and he's not some Hulk. I mean, he's what 6'1", maybe 6'2". I mean, I think that there's never been a time in NFL history where height has been valued less. I mean, Jalen Hurts isn't some colossus when he's out there on the field. I think that the days of the old 6'6" Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, I mean, I think that those days are kind of over, um, especially with mobility because you can move the target, you can move the pocket, clear up the rush lanes, a lot of play action stuff. So it's a lot easier to not have balls get batted down, in my opinion. So I'm not worried about his height at all. Nevada, are you?
Well, no, I mean, again, you look at Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel is a really good college quarterback, running around back there. And I guarantee you, Dylan Gabriel's not bigger than Julian Saint. And Julian's also got kind of that over the top that delivery where he delivers the ball high. I mean, he's a classic Southern California 5-star kid. So like he's been tutored well. He knows how to throw. His mechanics are excellent. Got a big live arm. So even if he's not the biggest kid in the world, I'm really not. We were spoiled by Will Howard. Will Howard to have a horse like that. That's just a big, big kid that can take the punishment. Look at them doing. I'm not sure when we're going to have that again. But Julian's just a different kind of quarterback. But he can be equally effective.
Yeah, I mean, Will was Will's different. I mean, I like my quarterbacks like I like my combo meals, man. Biggie size. Give me the biggie size quarterback because when it gets cold and these guys get hit and you got some young left tackle out there, some guard, and you get some biggie size quarterback back there that's huge, then I mean he's gonna be able to absorb that hit. And that's why a lot of these, these big Brett Favre and Brady and Manning, they're all big dudes because the defensive ends are huge. So you look at these little guys like Baker Mayfield, they get hurt all the time. You get those little tiny quarterbacks back there, they're gonna get smashed by the 270-pound defensive ends that can run a 4.5. So I everything about Will Howard was about as perfect as it can be. And I'm gonna miss him. I know we always talk about that on the show, but to have a big athletic dude like that who was a leader, and I just hope that Julian Saint was able to soak up as much of that as he could, because that dude put on a clinic for leadership, especially only being here for a year. It's one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. So, Ian Bates, thank you for the deuce. I hope you're doing good, brother. Appreciate you, my man. Julian Saint goes nuclear this year. I'm thinking repeat 25. I mean, we're preseason number one according to ESPN, so I don't think you're too far off, Ian. And I think that's something that's it's always interesting because Nevada and I are honest, and there's going to be a lot of rebuilding this year, but I still think we have the most talented team in the country. We have the best player in the country. We have the two best players in the country. So you've got these massive building blocks and they're ready to go. So I don't know. Could it happen? Sure. But I think football is a game of tremendous skill, but also incredible luck. And I think that that's going to be something that we're going to need a lot of luck this year. Just because you got to stay injury free, and you got to have a lot of things break the right way, like they did for us this past year. Nevada, your thoughts on a repeat in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, hard, especially given our schedule. We got the difficult schedule draw. We've got a lot of inexperience. We've got new coordinators, but I agree with you. We have the best talent in the country. We certainly have the best offensive player and the best defensive player, and so that's a pretty good start. And I think we got the best coach in college football too, because there's no coach in college football that I want over Ryan Day. You can have big game Dan Lanning or Kirby Smart, because you can have Kalen DeBoer. I mean, who's better than Ryan Day? Nobody. So I think when you've got the best coach, the best offensive player, and the best defensive player, man, you certainly got a shot. And if Julian is the phenom that I think he is, and a lot of people think he is, yeah, we could we definitely could be heading into a dynastic run for Ohio State football, because he's going to be around for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I think that something that's actually really good about the coordinators switching out. And again, I love Jim Knowles and I love Chip Kelly and everything they did, but you get two new coordinators, on each side of the ball, and these guys got to prove themselves and they got to push themselves. And I think if Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles would have returned, and I'm not saying those guys would ever be complacent. Obviously, they've been fantastic throughout their coaching careers, but there's no question there's not going to be any complacency this year because you have two new guys running the show, and they're literally sitting in humongous seats. I mean, because after what Chip Kelly did last year and what Jim Knowles did last year, I mean, you're gonna be working 30 hours a day to try to match where they were and what they did. And I don't think it's possible, frankly, because of the talent gap. Because I think last year's team was probably the most talented team in college football history. So I don't think they're gonna be able to match it, but it's gonna be fun to watch, and we're gonna be doing shows every night to talk about all of the tidbits that we hear from inside the Woody Aces. We've got a lot of them coming. So Nevada, let's wrap this thing up. Any final thoughts? You are muted.
You're seeing those guys that are coming in through the winter workouts right now, and you're starting to see the young guys starting to make their push, starting to hear the names. So this is kind of an exciting time for me, because from an inside information standpoint, this is when you're kind of getting out who are the next stars, who's the guys that are going to be flashing in 2025. And if you remember BuckeyeScoop.com, check it out, because we're going to have a nugget tomorrow from the second wise man on some names to watch from the winter. And it should be pretty spicy. So if you like this podcast, you'll love being a member of BuckeyeScoop.com. So join today.
Yeah, the site's been incredible. So it's the absolute best. So all right, I appreciate you guys joining with us. Again, if you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Again, I appreciate you guys so much for being on here, kicking it with us as always. Chat was lit. I appreciate all you guys that are regulars in here keeping that chat flowing. We appreciate you, love you guys to death. So again, if you want to help me out in a huge way, please subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts. That is something we've been growing, and we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick. So thank you for that. If you guys have not subscribed to that, it takes 5 seconds to do, and it's the best thing in the world you could do to help me. So appreciate you guys. So with that being said, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. Hopefully I can kick the sore throat and I can actually sound normal, but we are on, and shout out to my, the Kimbo. She's got me on vitamin C and cough drops and everything else known to man. So we'll see if we can get a little bit better. So with that being said, love you guys to death. Appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. And thank you, Scoop family. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. You guys have a great night. Go Bucks.